Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or I suppose it might be good morning or good evening for some of you. I think we're still in the first 2 weeks of January, so I think it's still okay to wish everybody a happy new year. But I think most importantly from everyone at Semex, we hope everyone is safe and healthy and happy as we all go through some challenging times brought on obviously by the pandemic that we find ourselves in. But one of the great things that has come from the pandemic for Semex is our ability to offer a pretty wide-ranging group of educational webinars for our customers and our sales teams around the globe. And we're so pleased that we're going to be able to continue that series today, and very excited about some of the other things that we're working on for later in 2022, and we'll have some details on those a little bit later on. I would like to start today. We're going to start with a video. We're very pleased to be joined by Cox Wensink of Hoenhorst Farms here in southwestern Ontario. And I think to get started, and before I review some housekeeping items as to how we want to operate questions, Krista, I think I'll get you to run an introductory video, please. Oh, thank you very much, Krista, and what a great video that was, and I think a good way to get people thinking about some of the information that will be discussed today. We did want to go through just a couple of housekeeping items. We're going to operate the question and answer session at the conclusion of the presentation today, and at any time through the webinar, if you're thinking that you have some questions, you can work yourself down to the Q&A box, which is part of the menu on your screen. And in there, you can type any questions that you would like to have addressed today. And certainly, if we don't have time to get to all the questions today, we'll work hard at getting some follow-up answers back to you as well. So with that, Krista, just moving on to the next slide. The agenda is pretty straightforward. We've got a nice discussion with Cox lined up with, I think, some pretty informative topics, and I think probably some approaches to some different things on the farm that will be of interest to people, irregardless of the type of dairy operation you may run, or even what region or the type of environment you may be in. So I think a pretty wide ranging group of topics that are going to be discussed today. The next slide, Krista, I think just shows you a little bit about where Hoenhorst Farms is located in Ontario. We're approximately, I guess, 100 or 120 kilometers southwest of Toronto, just to give you a bit of an idea. It's a tremendous agriculture region, lots of good farmland, lots of supporting services as well for dairy farms. And I'm sure many of you that have been to Canada for one reason or another touring farms have most likely found your way through that region of the country. So with that, Cox, I'd like to welcome you to the meeting today. When I heard that you had agreed to help us out with one of these webinars, I was pretty excited about the attendance we would get, because I know the tremendous attention to detail on your farm and your really data-driven and aggressive and future-thinking approach to managing the dairy is going to be of interest to Semex clients around the world. So I think, Krista, if you just want to move forward another slide, we'll get talking a little bit with Cox, and maybe you can give us an introduction about yourself and a little bit about the farm.
Thanks, Brad, and thanks for having me here today. I'm pretty excited to be part of the Semex webinar series. Hoenhorst Farms is a family-run farm. It originated in the Netherlands. My great-grandfather, he started with the first farm in 1926. So we are nearing a 100-year anniversary of Hoenhorst Farms, actually. The farm eventually moved to Zeewolde in the Netherlands, which is the reclaimed land, where my parents rented a farm, milked 85 cows on about 100 acres of land. But growth was capped there, so they looked abroad for more opportunities. And they eventually came with my siblings and myself to Canada in 1994, where they started milking 65 cows in a parlor here in Innerkip on about 75 acres of land. We've always had a clear goal of growth, and we reinvest year on year to expand the farm. I'm now fourth generation running the farm, and we now milk 480 cows and farm about 800 acres of land.
Well, that's great, Cox. And it's interesting to me that your path back to the farm didn't necessarily follow the traditional family transition. You had some different experiences in college and university, and maybe you could give us a bit of an idea of your own personal journey back to the farm.
Yeah, that's right. I took a bit of a detour and eventually ended up here on the farm again. I always had an interest in dairy farming, and obviously growing up on the farm, I had a lot of experience just seeing my parents farming. But I decided to initially pursue a career in engineering and management consulting. So I actually have a Bachelor of Mechanical Engineering and a Master's in Product Design, and worked as a management consultant in the Netherlands and Belgium for a little bit before eventually returning to the farm. I'm happy I chose to come back to the farm. It's a fantastic career, fantastic way of life. But my background, engineering and management consulting, gave me a very systematic background in how to problem solve. A lot of data analysis is in that field. But my design background gave me some insights into how you take this data and implement it in a practical way, focusing more on the people aspect. So I tried to take the best of these two very different approaches to problem solving and use them on the farm.
Yeah, very good. And I can imagine that with 10 robotic milkers and probably other automated things around the farm, mechanical engineering could come in handy, I would think. So that's great. Give us a little bit of an in-depth look at the farm as far as land base and cow numbers and some of those things.
So we milk about 480 cows currently. just under 1,000 head in total on our farm. We include all the calves, heifers. We farm about 800 acres of land. We are a closed herd, all Holstein cows, so we raise all of our own replacements. We actually milk cows in two locations, and you could see that on the video there. We have what we call the home farm, which is where the farm originally started. And now we also have a second location around the corner from there since 2016. So at the home farm, we milk 370 cows, mostly mature cows. And at the farm around the corner, which we call the Ttmr farm, we milk 110, which are all first lactations, and we house some of our pregnant heifers. Our cows are milked by Lely robots. We have 10 of them, 8 at the home farm and 2 at Ttmr. And in terms of crop production, we grow all of our own forages. So we have corn, alfalfa, and wheat. And due to just some restrictions in land, how much we have available to us, we try to double crop as much as we can with triticale and winter wheat as well. And for that, we rely on custom operators to do the bulk of the work.
Right, very good. And Krista, if we just go to the next slide, I think one thing that I know is very important to to the management and to the success of your operation is the work that you do with obviously your young calves and some of the work that even happens before that. Can you talk just a little bit about some of the best practices, the business best practices, some of the protocols and benchmarks that you work with on the dairy?
Yes, so this is something that we've worked a lot on especially in the last few years, I'd say. We used to look at fixing things from the production end, but we've shifted that focus several years ago to make sure everything goes well right from the beginning. And that's where we started looking to best practices and protocols in the industry. And we saw a big need for improvement in our maternity barn. So the picture that you see here is our maternity barn, the way it is right now. But where we saw a big need to update things in our operation was this used to be much smaller. And so several years ago, we were calving about 600 cows out in an area where you should only calve out less than a third of that. And so, as you can imagine, workflow was very tedious and difficult. It was also just difficult to keep clean. So we were running into a lot of issues with stillbirths, assisted calvings, calving problems, just mortalities, but also too many fresh cow problems. And this is when we really start looking at getting protocols in place, benchmarking how we were doing, and continuously looking at how are we doing, what can we improve, what can we do better. And then this followed through into all aspects of our dairy operation. So it snowballed from there, really. So we looked at the very beginning where calves calve out, and then looked at every other stage of heifer racing, and then right into production.
So this is, a great looking maternity pen here. How long before your cows calve do you bring them into this area?
So they come into this area about 3 weeks before calving out. So we've also implemented some very strict protocols here. So we have 3 big straw packs that have enough room for about 15 to 20 cows. And they go in there 3 weeks before calving so that they're nice and relaxed when they finally calve out. Most of them calve out unassisted. We also keep very close track of which cows go in and when. And for instance, we make sure that cows carrying twins go in a little bit earlier than cows carrying singletons, so that they have that right amount of straw pack time before they calve out.
Right, very good. Looks like a great environment for cows, during calving and getting those calves off to a good start.
Yeah, and what
So
we
let's
did
talk.
here is we made an all-in, all-out system. So what we do is we calve out 1 pen, and then we have enough time to clean it all out, sanitize it, and bed it up before the next group comes in, so that there is minimal disruption to the group itself.
Right, very good. And then calf raising obviously comes next. Can you give us a little bit of a walkthrough as far as how you raise your calves and some of the management perspectives of that?
Yeah, so what you see here on this slide is actually what happens right after a calf is born. So on your left, if you can imagine, that's where the straw pack is with the cows. And on the right here, you see the individual hut. So right after a cow calves, we have the heifers go into an individual mobile hutch like you see here on the slide. Our bulls actually go on the other side of the barn and they're sold in about a week and a half of being born. We also looked at best practices and protocols in the industry for our heifer racing. And we created, actually, it's similar to our maternity pen, where we created also an all-in, all-out system with heifer calves. So the slide here that you see is actually, it's Orlando, one of our employees, looking at our calves here in one of our calf group pens. This area too is, I'd say, is in addition to the maternity pen, the calf management was another major area where we made some big improvements in the last few years. What we were dealing with before is that we had calves housed on a packed dirt floor with straw, all ages grouped together. And we didn't have any consistent protocols or scheduling, or even we weren't really collecting too much data. So we knew that we could do a lot better job of raising our heifers. And obviously knowing that when you raise healthy heifers, you also get better production from the cows that they come to be. So it was really important to us to give our heifers the best possible start to life. And so the changes that we made is that we made an all-in, all-out groups. And this slide shows one of the 5 pens that we have in this calf barn. So we have 5 all-in, all-out groups that house about 15 calves each. And they are grouped by age. So maximum 2 weeks age difference, or a maximum group volume. So no more than 15 in that group, to make sure they have enough space for themselves. And we do the same thing as what we do with maternity pens, that once a group exits and they go to the next barn, that's at 8 weeks old, when they're weaned, we can also clean out and sanitize the pen and put new straw in for the next group. And in addition to that, just the physical side of the barn that we changed, we also looked at how can we better our calf raising protocols. And so we really looked at also our calf feeding. And what you can see here in the slide here at the back is our calves are fed with automatic calf feeders, and they have ear tags in that allows us to monitor how much calves drink. So that also allows us to tweak and make sure that they get enough milk to gain weight appropriately. We also have very strict protocols with dehorning, disease management, disease diagnosis, and this is all tracked in our dairy comp software so that we can see how effective is our calf racing and how effective are our treatments. Ultimately, we dehorn our calves around 5 weeks, and they move to our young heifer barn at 8 weeks. And this is the point where we use visual and genomics to cull calves and decide which ones continue on in our herd. And then we end up breeding the heifers at 13 months old. And from there on, then eventually end up in our milking barn.
Very good. And what are some of the key performance indicators that you can look at within your calf raising to kind of measure, the performance of the operation?
Yes, so the key performance indicators that we look at here is we work with our vet closely to monitor how often certain types of diseases occur in our calf groups. And we also look at treatment success rates. So here it really comes down to also looking at how making sure that our staff is trained appropriately to diagnose calves early and treat them with the right treatment protocol. And when this goes well, we have fewer treatments and higher success rates on the treatments that do occur. Also, when we do a good job raising heifers, we have improved fertility. So we also look at our fertility of our heifers, and also look at obviously the calf mortality, making sure we don't lose a lot of heifers. And I look at something called heifer down completion rate, which is essentially looking at how many heifers continue, the ones that you choose to continue on in the herd, how many end up becoming um, milking cows.
Right. And there was a question come in just about how much is fed to these young calves. How much are you feeding, in this group pen to these calves?
So when they're under 8 weeks old, when they are still on milk, we actually feed all our cows milk replacer for consistency, and they are fed on a milking curve that's programmed into the machine. It's like a bell curve. And the maximum that they're fed is 14 liters. And we look at feeding them about 2.5 liters per feeding.
Okay, very good. Very good. Okay, we'll move on, talk a little bit about cow comfort. I know this is a priority for you and the team. What do you think about cow comfort? And do you have any ideas, as far as how that can be improved? Everybody's always looking for, better types of bedding and new ideas to be more effective. What are your thoughts?
And so do we, actually. um, Obviously, yes, the more comfortable cows are, the better they milk. And so this is an ongoing project for us. We always look at ways to create happy, healthy, relaxed cows. And cow comfort in this is key. In terms of how we create that, in the barn, we have very well ventilated barns, which is useful during humid summers that we get here in Canada. We also have a sprinkler system that creates an air conditioning effect in the barn. Uh, Often the barn in the peak of summer is more comfortable than my own office. We also have deep bedded stalls, slat rubber, and brushes. So we try to accommodate the seasonal changes where we can, um, constantly adjusting things, where our goal is really to create a consistent milk production year round. And so we have our cows, as you can see here, housed in freestall barns. Um, and all the curtains, fans, and sprinklers are set to automated systems with temperature sensors. So this automatically adjusts itself throughout the day. And as we have here in the summers, it can start out fairly cool and then get really hot in the summer. So it's important that this is automated so that we're not doing anything manual. Um, and we have brushes installed for the cows just so that they can scratch themselves. It's actually kind of funny to see, but it keeps them relaxed. What you see here in the bedding, that's something that we did fairly recently. We changed our bedding from water beds to deep bedded stalls. And the mix that you see here in this slide, it's actually cardboard with lime and sawdust and lime. And we bed it every day, but one day with cardboard, one day with lime and sawdust. And the cows seem to like it. They're lying down more, which is a benefit for us. We see a little bit of an increase in milk production there. We obviously know that sand is optimal for cows, but because we have manure pits, this would not be a good choice for our specific barn. And we thought the next best thing would be these deep bedded stalls.
Very
And
good.
then, yeah, and one other thing that we did that really improved lameness on our farm is we installed slat rubber. And if you look carefully here on the bottom right of the slide, you can see that.
Yeah.
We started installing that in the barn with milkers. We knew that some cows, we noticed that when they would enter the barn, some of them were very enthusiastic and were running around. And that's not obviously great when it's just concrete. When we installed rubber, we immediately noticed that lameness decreased drastically. Um, and there was such an improvement in mobility, but also then subsequently heat detection. And so we started installing rubber in our other barns as well. So after the robot barn, we put it in our dry cow barn and then our heifer barns. And now pretty much all our barns have slat rubber because it's shown to be such a benefit.
I think recently, Cox, you'd constructed a barn with feed alleys on the outside as opposed to in the middle, and just comment a little bit on how that's went for you.
Yes, so our newest barn has feed alleys on the outside, that's correct. And traditionally our original barns had feed alleys down the center. And the reason that we did that was partially also because when we had weather conditions, especially with rain, we noticed our stalls were getting wet because the stalls would be on the outside of the barn. And so that's why we opted to have the stalls to the center so that it was a little bit easier to manage with the weather changes.
Right, right. Okay, that's great. If we move on now to kind of the engine of the farm, if you will, I guess would be the robots. I know there's always a lot of questions about these types of things, and if you could just comment a little bit on how the robots work for you and some of the key management items you see with those.
Yes, so we switched to robots originally because of a labor issue. Where we are, Woodstock area, uh, it was, I think this is now at least 10 years ago, that's when it was starting to get harder to find employees to milk cows. So at that time, we were still a parlor and we were milking 3 times a day. So some milking times would be very early in the morning or very late at night. And as you can imagine, it's hard to find people that have the time or are willing to do that. And so this is when we started to look to robots to help us with the milking aspect. Um, but other than the labor point of view, we also see other benefits of robots since then. So in the slide here that you're looking at, this is the home farm robot room where we have 8 Lely A4 robots installed in one room. This might be a little different setup than what you see in some other robot farms. We opted to put all our robots into one room rather than putting a few robot rooms spread out throughout the barn, which are some designs. The reason that we put all of our robots in one room is that we find it easier for maintenance. And so one reason that with the maintenance that's easier is that we have a very strict maintenance schedule with robots where we spend about an hour per day doing daily robot maintenance and once per week a very thorough one, because these things they run 24 hours a day 7 days a week, and this is really the core of our operation. They need to be running and running well at all times so they can milk the cows. And when we are doing maintenance on one robot, it's very easy to do a quick check of all the other robots to make sure they're all running well. What we like about the robots as well is that it allows for a very quiet barn. We find that the cows are very, their milk production increases when they're just left to themselves, when they're left alone. And these robots allow us to just leave the cows as much to their own. They decide themselves when they get milked. And the main, yeah, the way we have scheduled things on our farm is that between 6 and 10 a.m. in the mornings when the main activity happens, and this is also when the robot maintenance happens. And so basically after that, it's fairly quiet in the barn and all you see is just cows walking to the robots.
Right, so you're really, I think you've discussed, you like to limit, the interruptions to the cows as much as possible and keep things kind of consistent and as quiet as you can. But I guess that all goes towards cow comfort and keeping the cows happy, I suppose.
That's right. Yes.
Right. And how do you manage? There was a question come in about managing cows that need a treatment or a hoof trimming or something like that. How do you manage some of those cows that maybe aren't quite at their peak performance?
Yeah, so that's a neat thing about milking with robots. Because the physical, the actual milking aspect of it is already done, the robots really allow us to focus on what matters most. And so also with the robots comes the software, which has a lot of data in it. And the robotic software also has a health report that is very accurate and very good at highlighting cows that are suboptimal, that need attention. And so it's part of our daily protocol where our herdspersons know that this report gets looked at every day. And the cows that are on that report, we know that we need to go physically check them and make sure that we know what we can, if there's anything that we can do to make them better. And this is where cows would pop up if they have mastitis, lameness, or anything else. And so our goal obviously is to have 0 cows on that list. So that's a good go-to to make sure that all our cows are in optimal health.
Right. And how do you have your decision matrix set up? This was a question that came in about, when to cull a cow and, some of those kind of things. Do you have protocols that you have or SOPs for that, or how do you decide on those things?
On when to cull a cow.
Yes.
Yes. So actually, we also have a very our week schedule on the farm is the same every week. We have dedicated tasks to every day of the week. For instance, Tuesday is our herd health day, and that's also when we check suboptimal cows with our vet, the ones that maybe we're not sure about if we can do something to help the cow improve, or if she's a candidate to be culled. So what we look at is the cow, is there something wrong with the cow? Do we know what it is? Can we treat it? And then we look at, is it worth treating in terms of where's the cow at in lactation? Where's she at in repro? Is she basically, is she a profitable cow for us? Will she be a profitable cow if she is treated? And if the answer from that is no, then she becomes a candidate to be culled. So
Right.
we try to make it a quantitative decision.
Very good. Let's move on to breeding strategy. If we move to the next slide, and obviously when you're managing that many cows, I'm sure there's a genetic and a breeding strategy that kind of go along with that. Just explain to us a little bit what some of your breeding philosophies are on the farm.
So ultimately, we want healthy, high-producing cows that are robot-friendly. And these are the traits that we look for when we select sires for our cows. So we focus on trait improvement. The healthier the animal, the more labor efficient she is also for us. And we know that in that herd health has a significant genetic component. And actually, that's why we decided to breed to Immunity Plus. In 2017, we started breeding about 30% of our cows to Immunity Plus. And we saw such positive results that we have since continued and are now 100% Immunity Plus. So currently, our herd is about 95% Immunity Plus average, high or higher, which is very nice. We're very happy with that. And we combined this with some better protocols on our farm, but overall we've seen an improvement in the animal health, in the cow health, and subsequently in production. So this is for us a key component of our breeding strategy. In addition to that, we also look for high volumes of fat and milk and positive traits, mainly calving ease, but specifically for robots. So we try to keep our breeding strategy simple. So Immunity Plus, volumes of milk, fat, calving ease, but also robots. So we want to make sure that the cows that we have udders that are easy for a robot to attach to. And what we look for here is what we call a box udder. So I need udders with teats that are like a good length for the robot to attach to. We had some issues in the past with the udders having very short teats. We call them knobs. And so to compensate for that, we are now selecting for slightly longer teats and slightly wider teat placement, because robots at times tend to have difficulty connecting to short teats and teats very close together. And we also try to avoid a reverse tilt because a robot doesn't see that. And what we've recently done in the last couple of years, if A2A2 is available in the sires with the criteria that I just described, we go for A2A2.
Right. And talk a little bit about, the performance of your cows. I mean, they're obviously productive, but, I know herd life and things like that are something that you do keep very close track of. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, so we also monitor how much of our cows are in third lactation over. We know that the longer a cow has a healthy life in your herd, if she's producing well, then the more profitable she is for you. So we do focus a lot on herd health and trying to give our cows the healthiest, longest life possible. In terms of culling, we look also at why we cull our animals. So these are things that we closely monitor to make sure that we have a healthy, productive herd.
Very good. And I know that you have a close working relationship with the EastGen team here in Ontario, and I know you've worked with Drew Tyler a little bit. Talk to us a little bit about how you incorporate some of these different solutions into the management on the farm.
Yes, so we've actually worked with Drew for over 10 years now. And that's pretty neat because over time Drew has really gotten to know us and we've got to know Drew. So he knows very well our farm, what our goals are, what we try to achieve, and how we work. So as a consultant, knowing all of this information, uh, he can make some very educated recommendations in terms of sire selection and repro to make our farm run as efficiently as possible. And then we trust his expertise in that. So I work very closely with Drew to achieve our targets. He actually helps me with some of our benchmarking. So I'd say every other week, Drew and I check in with each other and we go over some of our key benchmarks, specifically focus on repro, disease incidents, and look at areas that can benefit from some improvement. And from the repro side, we look at also how much sex semen we use, where we use it, how much beef semen. All of these things are tweaked based on performance. And the way I work with Drew, um, and I really appreciate that he takes a lot of the hard work out of our sire selection. So he knows what the traits are that we look for. And he creates for me a short list of sires that fit the traits that I'm looking for. And that makes my sire selection a lot easier. And then every quarter we select new sires for our cows to make sure that we get the genomic improvement that we want.
Very good. And then part of those solutions, Krista, on the next slide there, I think we get into talking about genomic testing a little bit, and just talk to us, how long have you been genomic testing, and how do you use that data?
Yes, we started genomic testing about a year ago. We take genomic samples from newborn calves right at birth. I find it super easy to use. It's very fast. So we're starting to integrate genomic data into our breeding strategies. And this again is where Drew helps us. Drew helps us program our breeding decisions and genomic information into dairy comps so that we can make our breeding decisions based on that. Because we have several herds persons that make the daily breeding decisions, we've actually programmed our sire selections into dairy comp. So after my conversations with Drew about our breeding goals, this gets programmed into dairy comp so that our herds persons don't have to think about the details of the sire selection. On dairy comp, it just pops up as sire choice number 1 and 2 that they choose from that are appropriate for the cow that is in heat on that day. So it really simplifies a lot of the work. We also, with genomics, we've started to look more at pro dollars. And this is some of now that we know the pro dollar value of our heifers, we can use this information also for culling. And this is something fairly new that we are working on, but ultimately we would like to make our culling decisions, if any, as early as possible to be as efficient as possible. So this is something that we decide on when a calf is weaned. She's 8 weeks of age. She's been dehorned. And basically at that point, we look if the calf is looking healthy. She's had minimal disease events, so hopefully nothing. And her pro dollar value is within the range that we'd like it to be, then she continues on in the herd. If any of those are off, she becomes a candidate for culling. So it's really neat that we have this genomic information. It's something that we didn't have before, and we hope that we can take more benefits of that in the future.
Right, so that really helps you select, the heifers that you're going to move forward with, and then so you do make some culling decisions and move some heifers out at a fairly young age, then based on that genomic data.
That's right. And rather than calling them what we've done historically, calling them when they run into repro issues. And often what we found is when a heifer did run into repro issues, it was usually tied back to multiple disease events when she was younger.
Right.
Or what we're seeing right now, sometimes they are a lower pro dollar value. So we can avoid all of this if we can call her earlier. Now, of course, we want to do this with a good safety factor so that we're not culling too heavily. We
Yeah.
do make sure that we have a bit of a buffer built in there.
And, for breedings on the farm, I know that, many people choose to breed their own cows, but I know the decision's been made on your dairy where you utilize the East Gen professional technician service. And how does that work for you?
Yes, we have actually the technicians coming into our farm every day, and they breed all of our cows. And this works out really well for us. They are the experts. They know how to do that very well. And to be honest, this is not a strength I have. So I know it's best to leave to the experts, and we've had really good results with that. So this is something that we will continue doing.
Yeah, right. Well, that's great. That's great. Okay, let's if we move on to the next slide. I know in our business at Semex, and I suppose just about every successful company, at the end of the day, it comes down to having a good group of people that are carrying out the day-to-day activities. And just talk to us a little bit, about managing your team at the two dairies and some of the initiatives that you've taken there.
Yes, so actually this is a very nice picture of our team. I like it a lot. So what I'll just do is a quick intro. From left to right here, we have Alvaro, who supports our herdspersons and is responsible for stall and barn cleanliness. Then we have Wiegler, who's a feeder and herdsperson. We have Mauricio, who's responsible for our calves and robot maintenance. Then there's myself. Next to me is my dad. Although he's no longer active on the farm daily, I do turn to him for advice and opinions very often. Next to him is Keith, our lead herdsperson, who is now working on our farm for 8 years. Next to him is Mario, who's also a feeder and herdsperson. Then we have Orlando, who supports our herdspersons and takes care of calves every other weekend. And then we have Omar, who is also a feeder, herdsperson, and maintenance person. So what you can see there is that even though we are a family farm, we have no family members employed. We rely on non-family employees. And so that makes us a little bit different, but also requires a little bit of different management of our staff. And so for us, it's very important to strike a balance between having an efficient farm and creating a good work environment for our team and providing them with rewarding work. And so it's also important in that we find excellent and reliable and stable labor. And as I mentioned before, that was a challenge for many years. And we see now also during COVID is becoming a challenge all across Canada. And so our farm has over time evolved to accommodate these changes. And so we really focused on creating protocols and scheduling and a lot of training to empower our team to do their job well and to have pride in their job. And so what we've done is create responsibility areas for team members and 2 backups for every position to allow for scheduling flexibility. And we spend also more time just on creating a group team mentality, celebrating milestones and taking the time to recognize good work. And for a little over 2 years, you can see that too here is that we have now an international team, I guess you could say, as we've employed workers from Guatemala on our team. And obviously this meant also our farm has made a few changes in that we accommodate language barriers, and myself, I've learned a bit more Spanish along the way. But I'm really proud to say that we have a very stable, reliable, and loyal and knowledgeable team. And really a lot of credit goes to them for us being able to achieve our goals as a farm.
Yeah, well, congratulations. What a great looking group. And if they're listening or watching, congratulations, because you folks do a great job there, and the farm is a great representation of the Canadian dairy industry. So if you're watching in there, folks, thank you very much and congratulations. We're going to move now to get into some statistics, Cox. You talk about driving efficiency into your business with data collection. And I know that on the next few slides, I think we actually have some of the targets and some of the things that you've achieved on the farm. So just talk to us a little bit about these 100 performance indicators that you have.
Yes, so we use data to determine what areas most urgently need improvement on our farm. And so we are collecting data in all aspects of our dairy. Ultimately, it's to improve efficiency and profitability, but also we look at it to create a happy team. We have an excellent team right now, as I mentioned before, and we hope they stay with us for a long time. So before implementing any changes, we always look at how does it affect the workflow? How does it affect our team? Sometimes we find that changes are great in theory, but in practice, they don't really make sense for our farm. So we really look at using this data in a way that it benefits our farm and our team. So with that in mind, we enter data daily on any event that happens to any animal. Things like vaccines, moves, meds, repro, all of it gets entered into Dairy Comp. And we take advantage of a lot of software programs that I think a lot of farms in Canada have, like Dairy Comp, and if you're robotic, T4C, AI24, Ttmr tracker, even the calf milking machines. And we realized that the data is only as good, the results are only as good as the data that is collected. So it is important for us that the data is entered very consistently and accurately and complete. And that's something that we are working always to improve. And generally, when we analyze data, we do find gaps in knowledge. So that's something that is just tweaked on an ongoing basis. We then use that data to analyze and summarize it based on how important it is for the area that we're looking to improve. So when we say 100 KPIs, we do track 100 KPIs, but to be fair, they wouldn't be KPIs if we looked at all of those 100 daily. So I do divide them into daily, monthly, and quarterly categories. So I'm only looking at about a handful of these KPIs. Monthly, a little bit more, and quarterly, we really look at them in depth and look at if there's areas of data that are maybe going sideways or heading in a different direction than we'd like them to go. And then they become areas of improvement for us. And that's where those projects that we discussed earlier on in this presentation, the maternity pen and the calf pen, that's how they came to be improvement projects. We saw that the farm wasn't performing as well as it could be in those areas.
Okay.
And so we continue to track that and make sure that the improvements we made continue to do well.
Now, Cox, do you have on-farm sensors like activity monitors or anything that you work with on the farm? That was a question that had come in.
Yes, we do. So working with robots, our cows have collars that gather a lot of data. So they also have a rumination data aspect to them, which is really neat. And that's where we can easily pick up on cows with health issues. That's something that's fairly, I think we started with that several years ago, and It's awesome. You can see cows a day or two before they actually get sick. They generally stop eating as much as they used to. So we can do a lot of preventative treatments with cows without having to resort to antibiotics right away. Obviously, they also have pedometers in that. So we use it for 100% heat detection. And our heifers wear these collars as well at before their breeding age, so that we can start tracking this data on them and breed them at the appropriate time. So
Right.
almost all our animals have collars on them. I'd say anything less than 10 months old does not have a collar on them. But after 10 months old, we can track a lot of data on them.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Krista, I think we'll move on to the next slide if we can. Just talk and give kind of a bit of an overview of crop and feed production on the farms.
Yeah, so on our farm, when it comes to crop and feed production, I work closely together with a team of experts. We have crop advisors, custom workers, but also nutritionists. And between that team, we make sure that we have high quality crop to feed to our animals. So when it comes to the actual ration that we feed to our cows, we actually so we house all our feed in bunk silos here on the farm, and we test the quality of our feed weekly, and then tweak the rations as that changes, and to match our production goals. And also here we again look at data entry and data gathering. The software that comes with our self-propelled mixer that you see there in the slide tracks also what ration each group gets fed and how accurately it's fed and how much dry matter is eaten by the cows. So we can see if there's anything going sideways there fairly quickly. We also customize our ration for each group of cows. We have our cows grouped by age and by lactation stage. And so as I mentioned before, the Ttmr location where we have 110 is all first lactation, so we can easily customize their ration. And then at the home farm, we have 4 main pens of milkers. The first pen is mainly first lactations, but also fresh cows. So it's we can customize that ration too to allow for the energy that they need. And the second group is confirmed pregnancies. Third group is later stage lactation, and the fourth group would be before dry off and do not breeds. So each of those groups gets a customized ration.
Very good. There was one question actually come in that's a bit related to feed and a bit related to production, which is feed efficiency. Have you started to utilize feed efficiency in any of your genetic decisions, or do you analyze any of that on the farm?
We have not looked into that in depth yet, but I have heard about it, and it is very interesting. So I'm sure that will be something that we'll look at more closely in the future.
Very good. The next slide is really just about land and resource management and environmental impact that our agriculture industry is having, is always up for debate. Talk a little bit about some of your initiatives in this area.
Yes, so when we look at land and resource management, we look at sustainability, and farming sustainably is a focus for us because we aim to farm here for a long time. And also because we have a limited land base, we want to make sure that we use it efficiently, but also sustainably so that we can maintain high quality feed. An example of this is the picture here shows a portion of about a 2.5 acre area that we have behind our milker barn that we sectioned off to filter runoff from our bunk silos on the farm. And this was a project that was initiated several years ago. We worked together with a local conservation authority and to create this 2.5 acre wetland. And it's pretty neat. It's a phosphorus filter. It uses a staggered filtration system to clean the runoff before it joins the main water system again. and it gets checked frequently between the local conservation authority and actually some university students, and it seems to be working very well. They're happy with it, so we're happy with it as well.
Very good, very good. And then one of the last things we'll talk about before we get to some questions is always, I guess, looking to the future. What does the future look like? What initiatives are on the horizon for you and the farming operation?
Yeah, yes, so we are always looking at growth and improvement. So for the short term, we'd like to get to 600 cows, maybe who knows, 1,000 cows in the future. Um, we're actually, for the very short term, looking at gaining more efficiency in feeding our animals, where we're currently using a self-propelled mixer to feed all our animals, but there are a lot of other interesting options out there. Um, we'll see what we end up going with. Um, and ultimately, we hope that the future will allow us to milk our cows in one place. Really, that will bring a lot of efficiency to our farm and our overall operation.
Well, that's great. That's great. And always lots sometimes the future is driven by what you would like to do and what you want to do. And other times you have to look for the opportunities as they come up. And I know that you and your family are always very eager to do that. I do have some questions. In fact, far more questions than we're going to have time to answer. So I'm going to try to pick a few out here, Cox. Tremendous attendance
Right.
today, well over 200 people. So we're just so thrilled about that. One question is, in your calf and calf management, do you weigh your calves at birth or at weaning, to measure performance? Is that part of your SOPs?
Actually, we do not weigh our calves. And this is more of a practical issue, is that we do not have a good place to put a scale in where we can weigh them. What we do instead is that during the point that they're dehorned, which is usually around 5 weeks, our cows are compared to, our calves, sorry, are compared to each other. So any of them that look a little different in height compared to the others gets a little bit of a closer inspection. But generally, we look at, just does the cow look healthy at that stage. One other thing that we do that is looking at gains is right before a heifer is bred, we make sure that she is the correct height. And we have a height minimum that we have marked in our heifer barns that a heifer needs to be before she gets bred.
Okay. And you might have mentioned this, but it was a question that came in at the end, so they may have missed it. What is the mix of your TMR for your cows? What percent of silage and hailage and different things like that? What constitutes that?
Yes, so this actually varies seasonally. So this is not steady year round. But for comparisons, at this point, when we're feeding our animals, we have about a little over 40% corn, little around 35, 37% hailage, and a small amount of straw, 1 or 2%, and the rest is concentrates.
Okay. And we're going to bounce around here from subject to subject, but that's the great part about questions. Average milk production per cow, do you track that in first lactation, or how do you track average milk production and pounds of butter fat?
Yeah, so just on a day-to-day management, as part of just a handful of things that I look at to make sure that we're doing well every day, we look at the overall production. So I just look at all cows together, make sure that they're producing on average where I want them to be, and that the butter fat is in the range where I want them to be. But when I look at our about biweekly benchmarking with Drew, and just with my management team on a monthly basis, we look in more in depth. So per lactation, we dig into that a little bit more. But on a day-to-day level, no, I look at the overall farm in general.
Okay, very good. And in the barn and with the parlors, how do you manage animals that don't come to the robot as often as they're supposed to? Do you run into much trouble with that, or is that not an issue for you? How do you manage that?
Yes. So when cows calve out, so cows have a great memory. We found once they're trained on a robot, when they calve out for another lactation, they remember the robot very well. They go right into it. But also we've done several things to make sure that a cow likes going to the robot and that this is not an issue. So all our 10 robots have the same configuration. The cow enters from the same side and exits from the same side. And we did this on purpose because we found in looking to best practices that when you switch that on the cow, it gets confusing and it can cause some problems with cows visiting. Also, the grouping of our animals is partially done on purpose for that, because when you calf out heifers, they're for everything is new to them. So we try to put them in groups with their peers so that there's limited competition and they feel more comfortable going to that robot. And the other thing that we do is we make sure that the first visit, when a cow freshens, her first visit to the robot is as comfortable for her as possible. So it's really important to us that it's done calmly. She's not felt pressure to do it, that she realizes that this is a good thing. And of course, the robot also gives pellets, so it's a little incentive for her to go there. And generally, if the first visit goes well and she drops her milk and she finds those pellets, they'll pretty soon figure out that they can go on their own. So the cows that don't pick up after the first or second visit, we fetch them until they figure it out. But in our herd of about 480 milkers, I think we're fetching about 15 twice a day. So that's not too bad.
Right, right, okay. And about another question is, how many times a day on average are the cows going through the robots? And do you notice a difference based on the age of the animal?
Actually, that's fairly consistent. So we have about 3.1 visits per cow per day. Obviously, there's you see some cows are super eager and they'll go lots, but in that we have that's where the software of the robot comes in. We have limits so that there's the appropriate time between milking so that the cow doesn't cause any teeth injuries
Right, right.
or hogs the robot, right? So you need to keep that
Yeah,
efficient.
right. A2, I think you maybe mentioned it briefly, but do you see any opportunity for, farms in your area to get, premiums for A2 milk in the future, or where do you see that going?
That's actually a pretty hot topic. I honestly don't know where it's going to go, but I'm very interested in what's done with it internationally. You see that it does have a market in Australia and the US, and it does beg the question, is there a bigger market for in Canada here? And we do see locally some more focus put on A2 with a recent dairy shipping that milk. So if there is a market for that, we have been making sure that we are in a position that if there are premiums available, we can jump into it. So I personally hope that that becomes something, it would be an interesting option for consumers, I think.
Right, right. How, so one question came in about, trends in the industry, and in Ontario especially, we're starting to see some on-farm processing of cheese and different dairy products. Have you ever considered that for your operation?
Yes, we have. Initially, that was something that I looked into on-farm processing, and I have great admiration for other farms that do it. Some excellent products come out of it. It allows more diversity for the consumers, and it really allows for the farm to tell its story. So I think it's fantastic. Um, at this point, though, with managing the farm, I have to admit my hands are full managing the farm. I wish I could do both. I need more hours in a day, but I think it's wonderful when people can do it.
Right, right. There was a question here about the heifers that you cull. Do they go to the stockyards, or do you sell them as breeding animals, or where do those heifers end up?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We try to sell them to the stockyards when we can.
Right. Okay. And the benchmarks that you use from the farm, as far as the targets that you're heading towards, where do you get those benchmarks? Do you get those from milk recording and Lactanet, or do you get them from other places, or how do you determine which benchmarks are most relative to your operation?
So our farm has been involved over the years with several smaller benchmarking groups where we've gotten together with farms similar to ours with the goal of improvement. And from those groups came a few benchmarks. And over time, we've on our farm expanded on them. Honestly, what comes out of it is a gap of knowledge on our end. So when we see something going sideways, we often get more questions. Why is it happening? What else could be causing it? And that creates a benchmark. So we think, okay, maybe we should monitor this. Let's start tracking it. And when we see a benefit to it, that becomes a permanent benchmark. This goes the same the other way. When a benchmark turns out to not be very useful, we take that off the list and replace it with something that's more useful to us. Also, just articles, magazines, webinars like this. When you hear other people talking of something that they improved, something that's going well for them, we look at how did they monitor, and we copy. We try to take good ideas and use them on our farm as well. So
Well,
it evolves over time.
very good, very good. Well, Krista, I think I'll get you to put the PowerPoint back up. I think we've gotten to a stage here where we're through the majority of the questions and tried to group them together as best we can. Cox, on behalf of Semex and all of the people from many different countries that are viewing our webinar today, thank you very much, and congratulations to you and your family and your staff. You're tremendous ambassadors for the dairy industry and agriculture in general, and we're so pleased that you're able to take the time with the group today. And if there are follow-up questions that come through, I'm sure we can try to get the correspondence lined up to get that in order. But once again, Cox, thank you sincerely for participating. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
We have a couple other real interesting ones coming up. Just a few seconds left here. Fair Cape Dairies in South Africa and First Farms in Slovakia. We are going on tour with our global webinar series, and we're certainly pretty keen to bring you all the details about some very interesting global operations that Semex works with. I think we can learn a lot by challenging ourselves to learn how and why people do things in different parts of the world. And we're very much looking forward to bringing that to you. So on behalf of myself and Cox and everyone at Semex, thank you for joining. Have a safe and healthy new year. Thanks, everyone, and goodbye.